Often in the final stages, just before submitting college applications, one of the materials that's the toughest to get together and really finalize is the personal statement. And even if you've been working on it for a long time, and hopefully you've gone through a few different ideas, many drafts, too many to count, it still is not perhaps going to feel perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's 650 words about you, and therefore it's not going to be a complete encapsulation of everything that you are, every quality that defines you as a person. It's going to have to be narrower than that, and it's going to have to be very compelling in how it captures one trait that you have, one principle, a belief, a characteristic. And that means you're going to have to make some really hard decisions when it comes to these final stages. What do you cut? What do you keep? What's important and what's really working for that purpose in your essay? And what is something that might feel meaningful to you but might not actually be that relevant to what you need to communicate in the essay? So making these decisions is really tough, and that's one challenge that you have to remember right at the beginning is it's not going to be perfect. Another challenge that you are going to face is that people are going to want to give you their opinion on your personal statement. It's a huge part of the narrative of your college application. Parents may all of a sudden remember that they wanted to look at it. Cousins, aunts, uncles, siblings, teachers, friends, online strangers, just all wanting to give you their opinion. And probably they're going to have conflicting opinions because in the end, it is subjective. You are looking to communicate something honest and authentic about yourself, and people are going to feel different ways about that. And they're going to have different impressions of what they want to see in a person. And they're going to put their own biases into their feedback, and you're going to get contradiction. And those contradictions can confuse you, they can distress you or overwhelm you. So be really careful about who you show your personal statement to, and realize that in the end, it's going to be your opinion that matters. You're going to have to decide that it's done. Not that it's perfect, but that it's done. One more thing though to keep in mind before I get into sort of tips in, kind of navigating all of these challenges is the idea that you might also feel this inclination to compare yourself to other students, to ask them what their topic for the personal statement is, or to even take a look at their essay. And this can be, go so far as to finding, models of students' essays who were accepted to your dream college the last few years, and they've posted it online. They've had this entire analysis that they've done of their own portfolio or profile, or whatever it is. And this level of comparison is also not going to help you at this stage. You need to resist looking at anybody else's essay when your essay is the only one to focus on. So if you understand the challenges that you're going to face when you're finalizing your personal statement, you should also have in mind the goals for what this personal statement is supposed to do for you and your application in regards to making this impression and this connection with the admissions officer as sort of like an introduction at a party. The person that you meet, who you speak to for 5 minutes, who you just find fascinating and would love to go grab a coffee with some other time. And to get there, you're going to need to ideally hit a few different targets. And the first of those targets is to arrive at a deeper level of substance. And this is often the challenge that a lot of students put up front and center, and they think that they really have to get super deep in their conclusion. But the point here is another level of substance, so a connection to something else in your life, an indication of why this is so meaningful to you in a way that might not have come up yet in the essay, or just a principle, a statement that is very direct and really captures sort of the lesson that you have taken from the story that you're sharing. It doesn't have to be something so grand and expansive as a lot of students will put. The bigger you make it, the more likely it is that it's vague or cliche and said before. So it does have to be specific to your story. And when we talk about a deeper level of substance, it doesn't mean just something bigger and fancier sounding. So keep that in mind. And that connects to the second goal of finalizing this personal statement. And you'll notice that we're focused here on the conclusion of the personal statement because usually it's the last part to come together. The second of these goals is to be very clear and memorable. Yes, you are going to be building in nuance and subtlety in these final edits. That's very important. You need to first lay out everything in your structure in a way that's comprehensible, and then you go back in and you weave in details and you work on phrases and you just kind of polish everything just right. It is true that that is worthwhile. You want to put in sincere effort so that the admissions officers can tell you really worked hard on this essay and it means something to you. At the same time, you can't be convoluted, so you have to have the logic of that final principle or connection or belief that you are stating. It has to be really tangible and memorable, and that's going to make it memorable. And if it's too hard to figure out what exactly the point is at the end, you're going to be in trouble. The last thing that is really important is sort of an undercurrent goal of the personal statement is an indication of what this means about your future. And this could be something where you're writing a very emotional story about some sort of social relationship or a struggle with mental health or some other emotional topic. It could be intellectual curiosity oriented. It could be an anecdote in which you were challenged as a leader. It could be none of these things. It could be something totally different. And that's the beauty of a personal statement. The point is that you are young. You're a 17-year-old, maybe an 18-year-old, maybe a 16-year-old, who knows? But you have a lot of your life in front of you. And colleges really need to see that you are looking to grow further and that this is not sort of the end stage of your personal development. And therefore, the indication and the implication in a personal statement should be that you are going to continue this reflection that you've done on who you are, your life, your experiences, your relationships, and then continue growing, continue changing and evolving into the future. And so even though that's not something you necessarily need to state explicitly, you don't want to say, in 5 to 10 years, I see myself doing. It's something that should be readily apparent from the personal statements in perhaps a more subtle way. This is not something that needs to be clear and straightforward. It's something that should be a part of your thinking. When you go back over the essay, ideally with one other person who has been involved in the process with you, what is this saying and what is this indicating about the type of presence I'm going to have in the future and how I'm going to be growing and changing moving forward in my life. Finally, I have some advice on concrete things that you should be doing when you are revising your personal statements. The first of these things is you should be absolutely cutting out any platitudes. And platitudes are general statements that have been made so many times before and will be made so many times again. And this includes any statements about people in general. People are, or any informative statements. The world is, art is, curiosity is. These statements put you as a passive person. It's not your idea, it is that thing. And you absolutely need to avoid that like the plague, because the point here is to communicate your perspective. So avoid those platitudes. If you find them, cut them out. And similarly, avoiding glib or pithy things to say, like little sort of clever statements. This is not the place for those. They might be woven in earlier in the essay if you really think you want to highlight your humor. You'll have opportunities to do that. But trying to, have some like knee-slapping jokes at the very end of your essay is really not what you want. You need something substantial, and humor is usually going to subvert that if it's in the last, 150 words of the essay. And there are a few specific ways that you can look at the substance of your conclusion and go through the essay in order to make these things happen. The first of these things is that hopefully you've been working with someone who has an insight into your story. Now, this might be the family friend who you had conversations with to brainstorm the concept at the beginning of your writing process. It might be your college counselor, it might be a teacher who was willing to help you out a little bit, a friend who you trust for a specific reason, parent, a college counselor, a consultant. This is someone who's been closely involved in the process, if not at every single draft stage, then understanding what ideas you're thinking about, what it's going to communicate with you, etc. It would be really helpful probably to have a live editing session with that person, and especially in this live editing session, to read what you have written aloud. Does it sound like you? Does it sound like perhaps a slightly more poised version of yourself? That's okay. But it should still sound authentic. It should still have your voice, and this will often kind of bring up any questions that the other person might have that are unanswered by this conclusion. One other way that's sort of a framework for you to consider the personal statement and reading through it toward the end, you've gotten it to 650 words and you're almost sure it's done, is to imagine whether this essay, if it were up on a wall in a huge library of other essays, if your best friend in the world, without knowing any personal information from it, just the story itself, could pick this out and say, this is you. That is a great indication that you are done with the essay. And finally, one thing that can really help you to tie together the entire essay, that one thing that the admissions officer is going to remember about who you are. Try to write it in a sentence. The sentence should look something like, I am this person. You do these things. And this is present tense, meaning these are traits that define you. They are empathetic. They are creative. They are resilient, resourceful. Or they are the person who engages with their community in this way. So it could be also by your actions, your behaviors, decisions. And the second part of the sentence should be, and who will. And this means in the future, the person that you're going to become, the impact you're going to make, the decisions you'll have, and the influence you'll have on others, and the traits that you're going to continue to develop. But this should be a simple sentence. One or two different descriptors and qualifiers in each of these two parts of the sentence, your present self and your future self. And this will help you when you're going back over, reading your essay aloud to yourself, to see, am I really communicating these things and only these things as compellingly as I can? Or am I trying to pull in too many other random details or do things that aren't actually related enough to my main point? And if you follow these steps, I absolutely guarantee you that you'll have a better time getting to a sense of accomplishment and feeling that sort of closure that you need and that finite sense of, yes, this is something I'm proud of.